Welcome. The theme for this yoga practice is the vernal equinox, that balance point of new growth in life during the spring season, and a cultivation of inner balance and inner grounding. So the yin postures will include butterfly pose, both sides of a seated twist pose, Sphinx pose, both sides of half happy baby pose, saddle pose, and then baby frog pose with both sides of a lateral bend. So a useful prop might be a yoga bolster if you have one, particularly for saddle pose. Any other kind of soft padding like blankets and pillows that you might feel is useful to you. So gather up some props, cultivate your intention and your theme for what you feel represents the equinox, the balance point, particularly the one that segues from winter into summer, the spring. This practice begins with some breath work. So find a comfortable seat. You can sit cross-legged like I'm sitting, you can sit up on some padding like I'm sitting up on, sit a different way if that's more comfortable. Find a seat that's stable, a seat that has a little bit of space around you so that you can create some inner groundedness, and then begin to notice your breath, notice your inhales and your exhales. Notice your environment around you. So notice the temperature, notice the sounds, notice your inner landscape. And your inner landscape is your breath, maybe your mental thoughts, the train of thoughts moving through. Maybe you can even feel your heartbeat. Maybe you can feel some little pressure points that you make between you and whatever you're sitting on. Maybe begin to soften your face. Begin to deepen your breath slightly, not so much that it's strainful, but maybe a little bit slower breath. And then we'll segue, if you would like to, into a type of breathing that's basically referred to as alternate nostril breathing, and it's considered a balancing breathing because it's a breath that shifts. It has us concentrate on the two halves of our body, and it shifts between two halves. Here, instead of thinking of one half of your body and the other as left and right, you can maybe think of each half, divided down the middle here, as winter and summer. And the balance point is the transition from one to the other. That's the balance point, that's the equinox. That's either spring or autumn, depending on what you're moving into. So if you want to try this type of breathing, take your hands, rest them with palms face up. Maybe they're on your thighs and you're on your knees. And for the moment, just kind of notice your whole body. So a whole body breath where you very completely fill up your torso on an inhale and very completely empty your torso out on an exhale. Both hands open. At some point, we'll go ahead and focus on one side here. So when you're ready, after your next exhale, you'll close your left hand, keep your right hand open, and switch the focus of your attention on just the right half of your body. Let's call that summer for argument's sake. One inhale, one exhale, with the focus on the right side, and then close your right hand, open up your left, and then switch to the left side. One inhale, one exhale, and for the sake of argument, call the left side winter. So that's the winter season. And then after that, close the left hand, open up the right. Switch back to the right side, one breath to summer, close the right, open left, one breath in the winter. And then when you switch back and forth per breath, one breath for summer, one inhale, one exhale for winter. Continue this breathing exercise. And you can go as fast or as slow as you want to. So maybe you're moving a lot faster than I'm moving. Maybe you need to move a lot more slowly than I'm moving. Adjust this to your own pace and to your own cycle. It'll be more useful, more helpful that way. But the idea I want to convey is, obviously I'm not talking about spring, I'm talking about summer and winter doing this type of breathing. And the balance points is the transition. So the balance point is actually a dynamic balancing point. It's happening when we're switching from one side to the other, from one hand to the other, from the focus of one season to the other. So the equinox is in that moment when the hands are changing and your focus is shifting over to the other side here. So a few more breaths here. And if you're finding this too awkward and frustrating, you can just drop this breathing and come back to a normal, natural breath here for a while. Otherwise, maybe one more cycle to each season. We're visiting all 4 seasons here. Might be calling this the summer and winter, but the transition is spring and fall. And then when you're ready, just open up both hands. You can drop the visualization and this focus shifting. Come back to center. This is where you come back to cultivating your stability in your inner ground, just for a couple of breaths here. And then from here, a little bit of a yang warm-up before we move into the long yin posture. So we'll do some lateral bend cycling here, just seated. By the way, if you want to, if you've been sitting cross-legged one way, maybe change the crossing of your seat for balance. Now, if that creates pain, then just stay the way you're seated. But if it just creates a little bit of weirdness because you're not used to sitting the other way, then just notice that here. And then once you found your stability, arms and hands extend on either side. Inhale, make a big, slow, sweeping circle up towards the ceiling, and then exhale and laterally side bend over to the right side. You can put the right hand down on the ground for stability, and then reach up and over to make your left body long here. And then you just kind of bend, so you're kind of bending your torso here, which means we're not like tipping over, we're just bending here. And then bring yourself back up. Both arms come up, reach up towards the ceiling, and then over to the other side. Left hand comes down. You can root the left hand in the ground as you bend over and reach over with your right arm. And then we'll do a few more cycles of this. You can include your breath into this. So maybe inhale and grow nice and neutral. And then exhale as you bend over to one side, if that feels okay. By the way, you can switch your breath. Maybe you like to exhale up and inhale over. Maybe that feels more natural to you. Find your own version of this and then continue this for a few cycles. Again, lateral bends in traditional yoga were often seen and viewed as balancing postures. They were trying to balance the imbalances of the left and the right side, the summer and winter season. Indeed, we observe this in the equinoxes, in the Earth's yearly journey around the sun. And so the equinox is actually here in this pose. And then the solstice is in the lateral bend, end of the lateral bend, this stillness. So solstice means to stand still. And equinox literally means equal night, but it's referring to the fact that there's equal night and equal day all over the surface of the earth, no matter where you live. And then hands can come down. And then we're ready to begin our first yin posture, which is butterfly pose. It's a seated posture. Start out with legs extended out in front, then bend the knees, and then lower each knee out to either side. Bring the bottoms of the feet together. And the heels can be fairly far from the hips, so this is not round angle pose, this is butterfly pose. If the knees feel a little bit unstable, you can always put props underneath one or both knees, depending on what they're feeling like. So this is the beginning of butterfly. Maybe for a moment grow up tall and hinge forward for the forward fold. And then you're going, this is yin, so you're going as far as you go until you stop. Some of us don't go very far. Maybe you just go a little ways and you're stopped already. You're trying to relax and round your spine. You can let your head and your neck relax. And if this is feeling really strengthful for your head and your neck, you can always find some sort of system of prop. Here I can grab the bolster. I can use the bolster to just rest my head and my neck here, if that's as far as I went. Or you can always keep on folding forward and rounding forward, and it's okay to hang in midair as long as there's no pain. You can put other props underneath you, or maybe you can actually rest your head in your feet. So find, maybe you need to adjust your legs out a little bit farther, or maybe you need to adjust them in. So you're trying to find your butterfly pose here. Soften the muscle fiber. We're trying to reach into the connective tissue here. And that's best done when the muscles are quiet and soft. So you can use your breath here. You can use your breath to soften your torso. Allow the muscles in the torso to soften, and that allows the torso to round. The tension and the traction goes more into the collagen fascia that surrounds the muscles, and maybe a little bit of compression into the bones and into other types of connective tissue here. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the principles of a yin practice again, which are sometimes a little bit different than what's found in a more energetic and active yang practice. So the first principle of yin is called find your edge. That's the simplest way to put it where it's accurate. You need to find and explore and feel with your inner landscape where your edge is at. So this is an experiment and an exploration. So find is an appropriate English word. Find your edge. You're not trying to look like anyone else. You're not trying to be like anyone else. So your is an appropriate edge. You're not trying to find my edge. You're not trying to find someone else's edge. You're trying to find your edge for your unique, diverse body. And then finally, your edge. You're trying to find your stopping point, that place where you stop and you start to feel some kind of sensation because you stopped. Be it compression, traction, tension, pressure, whatever kind of word you use to describe that. That's what you're trying to feel here. We have been here about 2 minutes. We might stay here for about another minute. Give yourself permission to always come out whenever you need to. So this is the important part, is finding your edge, giving yourself permission to adjust your edge. Maybe after a while you can allow yourself to go a little bit deeper. Maybe after a while you have to allow yourself to go a little bit less deep, or even come out of the posture. This is all part of the process of continually noticing your edge. Next principle is called stillness. Once you've found an appropriate edge for you, you give yourself permission to stay, find the patience and the fortitude to hang out for a while there, and to continually notice and monitor your sensations. That's the effort in a yin practice. The effort is mental effort of noticing how everything is feeling during the duration. And the duration is the final principle, it's time. So we let a goodly amount of duration pass, several minutes, rather than just a few breaths here. So about 3 or 4 more breaths here in butterfly. Maybe re-evaluate your edge, maybe soften again. Again, this is a yin practice, so it's best done when muscles are quiet. So if you're finding overwhelming tension and muscle engagement, to freeze yourself into the posture, go ahead and let that soften. It might mean you actually come out of the posture a little bit, but with the muscle cells relaxed, then the traction more easily goes into the fascial system, and more easily goes into the other types of connective tissue in the body here. One more breath. Now if you fold it forward in butterfly, plant your hands and press yourself all the way up. Maybe start to engage muscle now here to grow your spine back to neutral, and you can make little movements to work out the kinks in that forward fold. Maybe twists feel good. Maybe a gentle back bend so you can lean back on extended arms and just lift your sternum up towards the ceiling. And this is to help relieve, to notice and relieve the pressures of that forward fold. Bring your knees back up together, lengthen your knees out, point and flex your feet a few times. This is the counter pose time between long held yin postures. I'll go ahead and suggest a very young counter pose that I call reverse table. So bend your knees, put your feet on the floor about hip width apart, hands behind your hips. Root your hands into the ground, root your feet into the ground, and then on an inhale, and just raise your hips and your torso up as far as they go for you. Don't worry about how high they go, and then very slowly with control, lower them back down to the ground, and then do a few cycles of this. So maybe on an inhale, you inhale and you lift, core is engaged, and then exhale. Core is still toning as you lower with control. So maybe a couple more cycles here. And maybe see if you can go a little bit higher on each cycle, or maybe notice the effort it takes, or maybe notice the core muscles waking up here. And then from here, come back to seated, and we'll get set up for a seated twist pose. So again, we'll sit. Actually, I think I won't use a padding. You can always sit up on a little bit of padding, but for this twist, I kind of like not having some padding here. Legs are extended initially, and then bend the right knee, bring the right foot on the outside of the left knee. You might want to actually sweep the left leg towards the right, maybe an inch or two, just to plant that right foot here. You can keep this left leg extended if you want to, or you can try to bend the left knee and sweep the left shin, the left heel on the outside of the right thigh here. So this is kind of the knee position. Again, if this is not working for that knee, you can always bring the leg back out there. And if this position just doesn't work at all, i.e. it's creating pain, you can actually just come to any comfortable seated position and do the twist here. So from here, go up tall through your torso. So there's some toning in your muscles to bring your spine to neutral initially. And then begin to twist over to the right until you find your stopping point. Now, some things you can do is you can wrap the left arm around the right knee, and then right arm comes behind you. This is meant for stability, so the extended right arm is down towards the floor. You're rooting the right hand into the ground just to create a sense of stability, and then you just slowly twist your torso until you start finding some resistance here. There's an element of yang in this pose. In order to twist your torso, you have to engage muscle, which means we won't stay here as long as we will other yin postures. We'll only stay here for a couple of minutes, just to get a little bit of a twist. But the idea is, let it be a gentle twist, in that you're not really wrenching yourself as far as you can go. You're just going until you kind of hit that first easy point of resistance here. And head and neck can stay neutral, or if it's okay with your head and your neck, you can look back over that back shoulder just to get a little bit of a stretch in the fascial bags, in the muscles that run down your neck here. And then check in with your breath. So I've noticed that a lot of people like to do yoga practices in the spring that involve a lot of twists. It seems like the springtime is the time to do twists, and so this is the motivation for this twist. So we've been here for about a minute. We can stay here a minute more if that feels okay. Give yourself permission to stay longer if you want. Give yourself permission to come out. And just notice the pressures. Notice where the pressures are in this twist. You might be able to feel this along your spine. You might be able to feel this along the outside of your sides of your torso. You might feel some of your internal organs being compressed. And that's considered a good massage for the internal organs. This is in keeping with spring cleaning. You're massaging your internal organs, and that's kind of help enlivening them, and it's squeezing the blood out now, but when we undo the twist, then the blood brings a new fresh supply of blood and nutrients to those massaged organs here. Just one more breath here. And bring yourself to center. You can do a little bit of counter pose here, but we are doing the other side of the twist. So you're kind of wiggling around to work that out. Maybe lean back to undo the legs here. Now we are setting up for the other side of the twist. So your seat, or this time, bend the left knee, put the left foot on the outside of the right knee, and you can always move this right leg a little bit over to the left here. You can stay here with that right leg extended, or you can bend the right knee. Bring the right heel on the outside of the left hip. Maybe find a little bit of contact, solid contact for this left foot on the ground. And then once you've found a good stable seat, grow up tall through your torso for a moment and then twist to the other side. So twist to the left. Set yourself up for this side of the twist here. Take a moment to find your edge. Regather your breath. Maybe remember the theme for class. The theme for this practice is it's sort of spring, the season of spring, and all the life that's rushing back and growing. It's kind of the height of spring. But it is also why we have spring and the time of year, and a little bit about the Earth's journeying around the sun. So because the Earth makes a yearly journey around the sun, and because its rotational axis is tilted, a lot of people experience seasons. And the seasons around the equinoxes are either spring or fall, depending on where you live. If you're in the northern hemisphere, this video is being recorded during the spring season. If you're in the southern hemisphere, then you're experiencing the fall season. During those seasons, there comes a time when there's equal amount of day and night during the day, then those are called the equinox points, and there's 2 of them every year. A spring point, one point where we're moving from summer into winter, and another point where we're moving in from winter into spring, or winter into summer here. And that's the spring point, spring equinox, and the fall equinox here. So about 2 more breaths on this side. When you're ready, gently bring yourself back to center. You can do a little bit of a counter twist again. And then come back to center and release your legs. A little bit of just counter maneuvers here to work out the kinks of that twist. You didn't hold the twist for too long, so maybe there's not too much reverberation here. Our next pose is a back bend. It's Sphinx pose. So make your way onto your belly. Legs comfortably extended out behind you, comfortable distance apart. So maybe they're not quite together, maybe they're like hip width or shoulder width apart. And then draw your elbows underneath your shoulders, about shoulder width apart. And then adjust the elbows so that you can sort of let your upper arm bones do the holding of your torso rather than your arm muscles. That way you can relax your arm muscles. And then release and relax the rest of the muscles in your torso to allow your spine to sag here. If this is too much of a back bend, move your elbows forward to create less of a back bend. If this is not enough of a back bend, you can put something solid underneath your elbows like blocks or books. If you have a really supple spine, you can always come up into seal pose where the arms are extended and locked off. So find your version here, and we'll stay here in Sphinx for about 3 minutes or so. And then again, notice your stopping points. They don't have to be intense or severe. They have to be enough that you notice them. And for a lot of us, we notice that subtle compression in our mid to lower back. And that's the point. That's the primary point to Sphinx. Sphinx is a great pose to do after long periods of sitting in a chair, because most of us tend to sit with a slight forward fold. Shouldn't say all of us, because some of us have a lot of lordosis or sway back, and if that's the case, when we relax our back, we're actually back bending rather than forward bending. So again, that's a case of human variation. It just depends on what kind of spine and what kind of torso you have here. But for a lot of us, when we sit, our spine is rounded in a forward fold, and so doing a back bend. Generally useful thing to do. I always like to tell people, it's like this is, if you only do one yin posture, for a lot of us, Sphinx pose should be that one yin posture that we do here. Your head can stay up, your head can just hang in midair. This is what I usually do when I'm practicing Sphinx for a long time. If neither one of those is great feeling for your neck, then put a prop like a block or a pile of books, or maybe even a tall bolster. Something that your head can actually root on so that your neck is kind of in a neutral position here. Otherwise, for a lot of us, you can just stay here for a few minutes in Sphinx and continue. This is a good time to check in with that breath cycle and use the breath to continue to soften tension that you might be feeling in your torso, in your upper arms, down, clear down into your hips. And use this time to really check in and see if you can change your attitude about some of the pressures that you're feeling, rather than labeling something as uncomfortable. You could just label it as sensation, or label it as compression. Give it a more accurate label here. Now, if it is pain, if it is creating injury, then you need to do something about it. You either need to change your edge, or you need to come out of the posture and do something else for a while. So about 3 or 4 more breaths here in Sphinx. When you're ready to come out of Sphinx, then slowly just lower your torso all the way to the floor. Make a pillow with your hands, so one palm on top of the other palm. And then turn your head to one side. Rest the side of your head on your hand pillow that you made here. And then whatever way you turned your head, kind of bend your hip, drag your thigh up alongside your hip. This is kind of a prone half frog pose. This is a hip opener to actually release the pressure in your low back and your spine from Sphinx pose here. And just stay here for a breath or two. This is just kind of counter pose for Sphinx. One more breath, and then at some point maybe a little bit more motion as we get ready for our next yin posture. The next yin posture is the first side of half happy baby pose. So you'll make your way onto your back. Legs comfortably extended out in front here. Shoulders, head, neck, upper torso comfortable here. And then Bend your left knee, draw your left knee into your torso. Now you can hug the backside of your left thigh with your hands or hug the front of your shin with your left hand. This is step number one in half happy baby pose. Maybe this creates a lot of sensation. If it does, this is a good edge. You can stay here. You can draw that knee closer towards the side of your left ribs, towards your left shoulder. If that's creating a lot of sensation, you can stay there. Or you can begin to point the bottom of your foot up towards the ceiling. And then take your hands, walk them up your shin, and maybe they have to just hang on to your shin. Or maybe you find your ankle. Or maybe you find the bottom of your foot. And then just hold on to the bottom of your foot with one or both hands. Figure out what's more comfortable for you. I think ultimately, if you can keep hold of the foot with your left hand, your right hand can just come down and rest at your side or rest on your thigh here to keep kind of the left or the right thigh down near the ground here. And then once you've kind of made your half happy baby shape, soften the muscles, let gravity and time do the rest of the work. So now we'll stay here for a few minutes. And again, if this gets too intense, you can just go back to maybe just pressing the knee into the ankle or just come out here. So this is kind of just a nice general hip opener. This one side, so we'll do the other side of this when we get done with this side. Good time to come back to your breath and come back to your sensations and come back to this theme, this intention, this idea of the equinox. The equinox is the dynamic changing of one type of year into the other type. So in the northern hemisphere, while this video is getting recorded, we're moving from winter back into summer. And in a lot of places, in mid-latitudes, it's pretty dramatic because it also signals the coming back of plant life and animal life. And so there's a general, an amazing increase in things growing and moving. So plants are growing, they're blooming. And so you see the amazing flowers that might be blooming right now. Animals are waking up from hibernation, getting busy, finding food, or they're migrating. And so there's generally an increased level of animal behavior this time of year because they're getting ready, everything's getting ready to take advantage of the warm months of summer. And this is what we define as spring. Spring can be very unsettled because things are melting, the weather's changing, there's spring thunderstorms. Yesterday where I live, there was an amazing thunderstorm. There's also amazing blossoms and amazing migrating birds. There's just birds and animals everywhere. If you stop and notice them, because like most of us, I live in the middle of a city, and I can get caught up in all of the social activity of the city and not even notice the natural phenomena that's going on around the equinoxes, be they the spring equinox or the fall equinox, where everything is slowing down, hibernating, migrating, and sort of going dormant, going to sleep for the winter time. Now in the spring, the vernal equinox, everything is waking up. And the whole world shares in an equinox. So whether it's the spring or the fall equinox, it's a time where no matter where you live, and pretty much all of humanity lives in a place where we can feel, we can sense this time of equal light, equal darkness, equal day, equal night. This all has to do with Earth's yearly journey around the sun. And we humans keep track of that yearly journey through the seasons. We noticed this thousands of years ago, well, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, that the Earth does actually keep a regular rhythm, a regular cycle. And that has to do with it orbiting the sun and the fact that its rotational tilt is tilted, that it brings periods of slightly warmer
temperatures and slightly cooler temperatures of the summer and the winter. And those days of the transition days of equal summer, equal winter, equal day, equal night is happening around these things that we call equinoxes. Go ahead and release your leg in half happy baby pose. Take some time to reverberate here. You might have to do a systems check on the leg that you had a hold of here. You can do some rocking around here, get some blood circulation back, feel the kind of the stiffness of that posture. And then kind of the nice counterpose to something like half happy baby is just the other side of half happy baby. So we'll go ahead and get started in that one. So now the left leg is extended, and then bring the right leg in, so the opposite leg here. And you have choices, you have options here. The first thing to do is just hug that right knee, either behind the thigh or in front of the shin. You can hug it deeply by maybe moving that right knee over to the right side of the rib cage towards the right armpit. Or you can, again, raise the shin, raise the ankle, raise the foot, so the bottom of the foot points up towards the ceiling. And then grab hold of the foot with the hand, or if you can't get the foot, just hold on to the shin or the ankle. And then hold the foot with either both hands or maybe with just one hand. Again, find your version of half happy baby pose. The extended leg doesn't have to be straight. It can be, that knee can be bent, it can be leaning over to the side. Again, we're trying to relax muscles here. So we're not trying to create tension. The arm, you might actually have to engage muscle in your arm. So we're trying to be yin in the legs and in the hips here. The hand is in a yang state because the muscles have to be engaged to keep hold of that foot. So it's not so yin for the arm, although you might be able to find ways to lock the arm off so that you can even soften in the arm here. And then we'll stay here for a couple more minutes. So soften, check in with your breath, and just notice here. I want to remind people that yin is a very allowing practice, an accepting practice. So we're not trying to fight our bodies, we're not trying to be critical of what we're feeling. We're trying to just be curious and to notice and to accept what we're feeling. And it might be uncomfortable. We might have interesting thoughts running through our brains here. And this is the biggest challenge, maybe the biggest effort, is to have patience in holding the posture, even though our brain is in a very yang state here. And maybe that's just the way it's going to be, and you're accepting that, oh yeah, I'm accepting the fact that there's thoughts racing through my brain. It's like this racing of new life that happens at spring. So the spring is a busy time. I was watching the honeybees just foraging for everything they could find in the backyard the other day. And so they're out, they're busy. And the birds are out, they're migrating, and they're busily running around. You can occasionally maybe hear a bird in the background here. So a couple more breaths on this side of happy baby pose here. You can maybe find one final edge, maybe intensify the edge or release the edge. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and release that side of happy baby pose. And then a little bit of reverberation here. You can do reclined windshield wipers. You can draw your knees into your chest and give them a hug. You can, at some point, roll over to one side. We'll move into our next yin posture, which is saddle pose. Saddle pose can be a pretty intense posture for a lot of us.
So if you find that saddle pose doesn't work for you, my suggestion is another round of Sphinx pose. But I'm going to suggest if you have a bolster, use a bolster or create a bolster-like construct here. Bring the bolster along the back of your torso. So narrow end of the bolster along the back side of your low back. You're sitting with legs out in front initially. And then actually you'll move your legs around, sit back on your heels or in between your heels. So this is the beginning of saddle pose. If you're someone who can't sit on or in between your heels, this is going to get probably pretty dramatic pretty fast. But you can also sit up on something. You can sit up on a block or a bolster if that helps the pressure in the knees or the ankles here. So I usually tend to sit in between my heels, kind of in a hero's pose here. But you can always sit on your heels. And then if this is a lot of pressure, this could actually be, but not painful, this could be your yin posture. But the second step to saddle pose is to start to lean back. You're doing this slowly because you're noticing the pressures that are building up elsewhere in your low back or along your thighs. And you stop when things are as much as you can bear. And maybe you don't make it down onto a prop, so you just have to hang it out on your arms. If you're really flexible, you probably just plop right down onto the floor. You don't need a prop at all. Or maybe a bolster is just enough to get all the way to down here. And then settle here. So knees can be together, knees can be wide apart, knees can be floating. If they're floating and unstable, you can put a prop underneath your knees here. They just have to not be in pain or not be feeling like they're feeling injured here. So if you're feeling injury in your knees or maybe in your low back, then you might have to back off here. Otherwise, if you're feeling just a lot of intensity, and for a lot of folks the intensity is running through the fronts of these thighs, maybe down through the psoas, maybe the intensity is in the low back. You're noticing all of this. This is what you're noticing in this posture. And if it is too desperate, too traumatic, then do another round of Sphinx pose. That can be, if you found that to be an okay posture, then saddle pose is essentially a back bend. And a lot of people can feel the compression in their low back, in the hips. And you can generate some of that similar compression just by doing Sphinx pose. So we'll stay here for a couple more minutes in saddle. Again, give yourself permission to come out whenever you would like. I always like to remind people, so when I instruct a practice, I'm just having to make up times for Yin practice. But for an individual practice, you have to adjust the times for your own body. So the time is another dimension of the prop. So we think of the three-dimensional shape of a yoga posture, but time is the fourth dimension of that yoga posture. And depending on how we feel and what our capabilities are, we have to adjust the time anywhere from a minute up to 10 minutes. And when I'm instructing a sequence, I have to arbitrarily just pick a time, and I tend to settle on 3 to 4 minutes for a general sequence. But you might like to stay longer, or you might like to stay less long in any particular posture. Particularly postures like saddle pose, which can be intense for a lot of us. You may only want to stay for a minute or two. And if that's the case, it's been about 2 minutes in this posture already. So if you're feeling like you want to come out, then go ahead and come out. This is where I kind of like yoga videos, because if I'm practicing to a yoga video all by myself, the instructor can't see that I'm coming out of a posture, and I don't feel so bad about it. Where there's a little bit more peer pressure and social pressure when you're in an in-person group class. But
even in that situation, you shouldn't feel bad about modifying or coming out of a posture if your body is giving you signals that something not good is happening here. So a couple more breaths here, either in Sphinx pose or in saddle pose. Maybe give yourself one final time to just soften and soak up this posture. And then when you're ready to come out, kind of reawaken the toning, the engagement of muscles in the front side of your torso. Put your arms on the ground. Use your arms to kind of help slowly start to lift yourself up, and take your time coming out of saddle pose. So you can grunt and groan, and I don't know if there's any kind of graceful way for most of us to come out of saddle pose. So just come out in an ungraceful way if you need to. And then notice the reverberations, the reactions of your legs. So our legs are deeply flexed in that pose. So I just recommend some kind of posture that extends the legs out. You can do this kind of slowly and gently by just extending one leg out in table pose. You can do it more dramatically by doing maybe downward facing dog or maybe a forearm plank pose. Whatever you need to do to lengthen out the legs, get some work out the stiffness and the stagnation of that posture. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate the next posture, which I call baby frog with a lateral bend. So baby frog is basically wide-legged child's pose here. So you'll start out on hands and knees in table pose. And then bring the knees out wide. So a little bit or a lot wider than your hips. You're just kind of going to where your knees and thighs stop, and then sit back towards your heels as far as you go. So hips move back towards heels here, and we've kind of got the beginnings of baby frog here. And then lower your torso forward until it stops here. Now you can stay here in baby frog, but I'm going to add a lateral bend to this here. So you'll extend your arms out long, and then slowly begin to inch your arms and bend your torso over to the right side here. When you get there, maybe stop, settle, sink here, and then continue to extend and lengthen out through the left arm in the left side body. So you can really sort of feel that stretch here. And then this is where we'll stay. Now we'll stay in the lateral bend for about 2 minutes. So it's 2 minutes on this side, 2 minutes on the other side. And you can create as much stretch or sensation in this left side body as you want to. Once you've found kind of a place where you are feeling something, then the idea is to stop, relax, release, soften the muscles, and just stay here for a bit here. So we're back to these balancing lateral bends, this balance point, which is what the word equinox kind of refers to. It refers to balance. And spring sometimes doesn't feel very balanced, and in a lot of respects, spring is a very unbalanced kind of time because it's transitioning from one extreme to the other, the extreme of winter into the extreme of summer. Or if it's the fall equinox, then the extreme of summer into the extreme of winter here. So about 4 more breaths here on this side of the lateral bend here. Now if you don't like the lateral bends, but baby frog is okay, you can just keep your torso straight and your arms extended outward here. Maybe one more breath here. yourself back to center. Maybe pause here for a moment, and then we have the other lateral bend to do. So start moving your torso, your arms, over to the opposite side. So over to the left now. So maybe find that initial stopping point. And then settle there for a moment, just to give your body the idea of what you're up to here. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper, you kind of spider walk your right fingers over to the left to increase the sense of stretch in that right shoulder, that right arm, maybe in the right side body. And then allow everything to settle and sink. So you're letting gravity taking over. So if you've gone to a fairly deep edge in this posture, you'll probably feel quite a lot of pressure points in the lateral bend, but we've been in baby frog pose for a good while now. And so you're probably feeling this in the hips and the legs here as well. So about one more minute on this side. And if you're practicing this in the springtime, near the equinox, and maybe contemplate the sights and sounds of spring. You're practicing this during the fall equinox. Maybe notice the sights and sounds of that transition from late summer into early winter, the gathering of stillness and the quieting and the darkening of the year. So one more breath here. When you're ready, slowly bring yourself back to center. When you get there, use your hands and your arms to lift yourself up. Slowly come out of baby frog pose. And again, you might want to do some exercises, some movements to kind of lengthen out the legs here. That was the final long yin posture. So just a little bit of integration before our final resting posture. So make your way onto your back. Bend your knees and draw your knees into your chest. Give your knees a nice hug, and then we'll do some knee circles. So keep your knees together. Maybe place each hand on each knee and then rock both knees over to the same side and then away from your torso and then over to the opposite side and then back in towards your chest here. And then continue to make those slow sweeping circles. And the idea here is to notice your low back. So notice the changing pressure on the back of your pelvic bone, the sacral area here. So you're giving your low back a massage. Go ahead and change directions. Go the other way here. And then from here, if there's other final movements or motions that you would like to do, then go ahead and do them to create balance, to create an equinox sensation. And then make your way into your resting pose. So I'll just practice kind of a traditional shavasana here where I'm just lying on the ground, arms and legs extended. So comfortably extended here. So legs might be fairly far apart so the feet can flop wherever they need to flop to be comfortable. Arms are far enough from the sides so palms can face up towards the ceiling. Head and neck and shoulders are relaxed and neutral here. And again, find a different restorative posture if this one doesn't work for you, or use as much padding as you need. Maybe you want a pillow under your head, or maybe you want your knees bent and you want a prop underneath your knees here. Maybe that feels better. Maybe there's just a totally different posture that you'd like to practice. Or maybe you just want to sit in quiet meditation. These are all acceptable resting postures here. So find your version. Get comfortable. That means if you're cold, put on extra clothing here. What you need to do here to allow yourself to release and let go. That's one of the points of these final resting postures. So it's okay to do a little bit of wiggling and figuring out of how you would like to practice this final posture. When you do get into this posture, then your focus returns to this active mental process of noticing what's under stress and what's under tension in your body, and see if you can release that. It may not release. Again, this is a practice of acceptance. So sometimes the tension can't be released. We just accept that. It's like, oh, there's tension and there's no way it's going away, so just accept that tension. Maybe draw your attention to your head, your face. You can release your jaw and your tongue. Soften the entire inside of your mouth. Soften the outside of your mouth. Soften your cheeks and your chin. Release your nose, and the skin around your left ear, the skin around your right ear. Soften your eye sockets, the muscles around your eyes, your left eye and your right eye. Soften that space in between your eyes. Soften your forehead, your temples, crown of your head. Release your thoughts. Allow them to be fuzzy and defocused. Maybe notice them moving in and notice them moving out. Notice that continual flow, that dynamic balance of thoughts. Notice your breath. Draw your attention down through your neck into your collarbones, your upper shoulders, your rib cage, down each arm. So notice, release your right arm, right palm and right fingers. Left arm, left palm and left fingers. Notice the tips of each one of your fingers on both hands, left and right. And see if you can notice a light tingling sensation in the tips of each finger. A subtle sense of energy. Continue to soften down through the rest of your torso. Relax your rib cage. Soften your abdomen. Release down through your hips, the tops and backs of your thighs, your knees, down into your shins, calves, ankles, heels, soles, and tops of your feet. Soften all the way down through the tip of each toe on both feet, left and right. And see if you can notice that light sense of energy clear down in the tip of each toe. Release, relax, and surrender your body-mind 100%. Visualize yourself lying in warm sand on a beach next to the ocean. It's at the sunset of the spring equinox. The sun has just set. Your eyes are closed. You can hear birds off in the distance. You can hear the ocean surf. And what you notice is that the ocean surf is actually keeping perfect pace with your own breath. So every time you inhale, You can hear the ocean surf rolling in. And every time you exhale, it quietly rolls out. When you're ready, bring yourself back. Deepen your breath. Start to make little motions with fingertips and with toes. Eventually expand into hands, into feet, into arms, into legs. Maybe even gently rock your head from side to side. At some point, bend both knees and gently, slowly roll over to one side. When you get there, resettle and then cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for your practice and your efforts, but also a deep sense of gratitude for you, your unique manifestation in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're ready, gently bring yourself up. Find a comfortable seat. Bring your hands together in front of heart center. I'll end practice with an Om. You can join in if you wish. The inner sunlight in me honors the inner sunlight in you. Namaste.